It's Tim Sheets of TechSpot here, and when it comes to buying a Windows laptop, there are tons of options on the market, some of which seem fairly decent, but they're usually accompanied by a downside that for one reason or another means that I can't recommend it to certain people. However, with the Dell XPS 13 for 2015, we're finally seeing a laptop that seems to be decent from every angle. It's got a pretty decent 13-inch display that is nearly bezel-free, incorporated into a very compact, slim and light body. We're also seeing Intel's new Broadwell CPUs that are quite powerful and also very energy efficient and very decent battery life, with Dell rating at least the 1080p model at up to 15 hours of battery life. So is this the Windows laptop that I can categorically recommend to pretty much anyone? Well, Dell has certainly hit the nail on the head when it comes to the design. Rather than opting for a traditional 13-inch body, the company has tried to cram that 13-inch display into an 11-inch body, making it barely larger than the 11-inch MacBook Air. To achieve this feat, Dell has included just 5.2mm bezels around the edge of the display, and not only does it make the display feel larger than it really is, but it also feels somewhat futuristic to be using a display that takes up so much of the area allocated to it, and it's really a fantastic viewing experience that you don't fully appreciate until you get hands-on time with the product. Unfortunately, the use of such small bezels around the edges has meant that the front-facing camera has had to be in somewhat of an awkward position, but I definitely can sacrifice this for having such an excellent viewing experience in such a compact body. Dell also hasn't skimped on materials for the XPS 13. The quite thin display assembly is made tough by the use of aluminium on the back that not only looks excellent but also gives it that premium touch that rivals Apple's MacBooks. Unfortunately, the minimalist design that's been used on the front hasn't been translated to the bottom of the laptop with use of rubber mounts for cooling that don't look too good, but I forgive Dell for this because you don't typically look at the bottom of a laptop. On the inside of the laptop, Dell has opted for carbon fiber, which definitely looks better in real life than it does in the photos and complements the use of aluminium on the outside quite well. It feels excellent to touch, and that helps when you're using the quite well laid out keyboard. I appreciate having well backlit keys, and the travel is good but not great from this chiclet keyboard, but that's understandable considering the thinness. I wasn't as impressed with the trackpad, and this would be one of the main downsides to the XPS 13. General tracking, two-finger scrolling, and tapping to click were quite good. I mean, that worked perfectly fine, but things like clicking and dragging and also right-clicking I had quite a lot of trouble to get working properly, and this is one area that I hope Dell can improve through a software update, but really, it's the only downside to the XPS 13 that I can think of for now. The slim edges of the XPS 13 also has a fairly decent selection of ports. On the left-hand side, we have the power port, mini display port, USB 3.0, a 3.5mm audio jack and a battery indicator, and on the right hand side we have another USB port and an SD card slot. Further to the front of each of these panels are side firing speakers, which I found to be fairly decent in terms of their loudness output, but in terms of quality they're still fairly crap as you'd expect for most laptop speakers. As for the display, there are two options for the XPS 13. There is a 1080p non-touch model that I received to review, as well as a 3200 by 1800 touchscreen model that will set you back an extra $300 and also reduces the rated battery life of the device from 15 hours down to 11 hours. And there's a number of reasons why I would tend to prefer the 1080p model to the Quad HD model, and it's not just because of the extra price cost and the reduced battery, but also because you don't have to deal with Windows scaling that can be quite terrible sometimes. I managed to use the 1080p model at native resolution, and it looked generally quite fantastic with crisp imagery and text, obviously not as crisp as the QHD Plus model, but still very decent, as well as excellent viewing angles, very good brightness that allows you to use the Dell XPS 13 either indoors or out with very little issue, and generally quite good color reproduction from this IPS class panel. If you do choose to spend that extra $300, you will get a slightly higher quality display that is sharper and also comes with a touchscreen, which can be quite handy, but I was perfectly fine using the 1080p non-touch model for this review, and that's the one that I would probably recommend you get. Now it's time to talk about performance. There are a number of different configurations for the XPS 13, but the model that I received to review comes with Intel's Core i5-5200U CPU, which is a new 15-watt Broadwell part that is higher powered than the Core M chip that we saw in products like Lenovo's Yoga 3 Pro, but it also comes with higher performance. I'm also seeing 8GB of RAM inside this model and 256GB of storage, although 4GB of RAM and 128GB SSD are standard. I would definitely recommend getting the 8GB model because these days 4GB is a little bit slim on the RAM side. When it comes to the Core i5-5200U, we're seeing a dual-core part clocked at 2.2 GHz base clock that can turbo up to 2.7 GHz. And this is a fairly comparable part to the 15-watt i5-4210U that was part of Intel's Haswell lineup. Now, the difference between Broadwell and Haswell is that we can either see higher performance on the Broadwell side at a similar power consumption rate, or we can see similar performance to the previous generation parts at a lower power consumption rate, which helps for battery life in those times when you don't necessarily need the full peak performance of the CPU. Now, typically I saw around about 7 to 10% improvements on the CPU side at peak, upgrading from the 4210U to the 5200U, which is a fairly decent improvement. But on the GPU side, we're seeing a larger improvement in the range of 20%, which will definitely help running games. Now, I'm not saying that the XPS 13 is a gaming laptop, because it's certainly not, but you'll definitely be able to run some of mainstream titles like League of Legends and Dota 2 with little trouble, and some other more high performance titles at low settings at the 1080p native resolution of this particular laptop. It will struggle more if you do buy the QHD Plus model. And typically speaking, just around using the operating system in general, I found the performance from the i5-5200U to be very good for this class of laptop. You'll have no trouble using things like Photoshop for image editing from time to time, or just simply browsing the web and editing documents like you'd expect to use on a product like the XPS 13. So I was generally quite happy with those minor performance improvements on Intel's side and the energy efficiency as well. When it comes to battery life, Dell rates the 1080p model as having up to 15 hours of life and the QHD Plus model as having 11 hours of life. And although I didn't see 15 hours of battery life in practice, I was nevertheless impressed by the battery life results produced by the 52 watt-hour battery inside the XPS 13. When I was editing my written review of the XPS 13, which you should definitely check out on TechSpot.com, includes a range of benchmarks and deeper analysis that you might find interesting, I achieved around 11 to 13 hours of battery life using the display at 50% brightness, which is perfect for indoor usage, doing things like browsing the web, editing in Microsoft Word, doing some light image editing, and also watching the occasional video. And I think that's a very good battery life result for this class of device, definitely going above what I've seen from similar sort of devices, especially the Yoga 3 Pro, which has quite bad battery life in comparison. In my benchmarks for battery life, I didn't see as good battery life results, definitely well below 15 hours, but still above some of the previous devices that I've reviewed. So it's definitely a very good device when it comes to battery life. So the question now becomes, can I recommend the Dell XPS 13? And the answer is a categoric yes. This is an excellent Windows laptop, perhaps one of the best that I've ever used. It comes with a fantastic 13-inch display with super thin bezels that makes the viewing experience truly excellent. It crams that 13-inch display into an 11-inch body, making the device overall extremely portable as well as being thin and light. It uses an excellent selection of materials, including aluminium and carbon fiber, and has a very decent keyboard. The performance from Intel's Broadwell CPU is perfect for this class of laptop, and it comes with better energy efficiency that allows the laptop to come with fantastic battery life. Not as good as the 15 hours that Dell recommends or states for this laptop, but it's still very good nonetheless. The only downside that I really have to it is the trackpad, which isn't that good and definitely requires an update, and things like a touchscreen not being standard, but I can definitely forego these minor downsides when the overall package that Dell is providing in the XPS 13 is so excellent. Pricing wise, the XPS 13 starts at $800 US. However, I definitely recommend spending an extra $200 to upgrade to 8GB of RAM and the Core i5-5200U, which will provide you that little bit extra performance and will be definitely worth the price, especially considering $1,000 is good value compared to other products like the MacBook Air, the Lenovo Yoga 3 Pro, and similar ultra portable 13-inch laptops. So on that front, Dell has also succeeded at providing an excellent laptop package that I can highly recommend. And that is it for this review of the XPS 13. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more reviews coming directly into your YouTube inbox. Check out the full written review on TechSpot.com for more benchmarks and deeper analysis. Thanks guys, this has been a TechSpot video review.